recording. And I'll explain the reasoning behind this choice of music in a little bit of time. Many of you know of the incredible fondness that I have and many of us have for sacred music that comes from the Qawwali tradition. And that's in fact where we're going to be going into. It's a wonderful, wonderful recitation of something that is called To Kuja Man Kuja. Literally, it is, where are you, where am I? But it has that sense of, and you sometimes even see the walls indicate this with their hand, look at your lofty, lofty rank, and then look at where I am. Look at how beautiful and mighty you are, and look at where I am. And of course, this is directed towards the Habib, the Blessed Prophet. So let's start with this. And can you all see something that says Coke Studio? Yes. And one more thumbs up if you can hear the sound as well.
Coke Studio Season 9.
Awesome.
Ya Nabi, Ya Nabi, Sallu alayhi wa alihi.
You make vacations fun, and we make booking them easy. Find your perfect. इल्हाम है जामा तेरा कुरआन इमाम है तेरा मिंबर तेरा अर्श परी या रहमतुल आलमी
right. One has to stop this kind of ecstatic music very slowly, because otherwise you could be risking something pretty drastic. 3 or 4 times I went to stop the music and bring us back, and each time I was like, oh, one cannot possibly stop here. We want to listen more and more and more. So yes, let's continue. So we are going to be discussing the heart of the Kaaba, a discussion of the house of God. Some friends are saying they can't hear well. Is that better? Yes, good. A discussion of the house of God in the holy city of Mecca. And it's a strange thing to speak about the house of God. After all, isn't God everywhere? Is God not the one who transcends mere time and place? So what does it mean to speak about the house of God? And what does it mean to speak about the house of God, which is, after all, mostly empty? The Kaaba serves such a beautiful purpose for us. We face the Kaaba during the prayers. Every mosque that you enter has a niche in the wall, a mihrab, an opening that indicates the direction towards Mecca. Likewise, in the pilgrimage, in the Hajj, we see that we are carrying out this journey from the four corners of the earth to meet in the center, to meet in the heart. So what's the meaning of this house of God? What is the meaning of this ancient cube-shaped structure that is old and ancient, back to the days of Ibrahim and Hagar and Ishmael? Well, the Quran gives us a few insights that are worth for us to contemplate on. We hear such verses as Ja'alallahu al-Ka'bata al-Bayt al-Haram. It is God who has made the Kaaba, the sacred house, qiyaman lin-nas, as a means of support for humanity, as a means of support for humanity. If you look just a little bit deeper, you see that that same word qiyam is also the same word for qiyamah, which is a resurrection. The goal of going to the Kaaba is to be resurrected. It is to see God in the same way that we will see God in the hereafter. And we are told that this was the first house, the first temple, the first sanctuary that God had built back even before Mecca was known as Mecca. Inna awwala baytin wudi'a lin-nas, the very first house that God ordained and established for humanity was in the region that back then was called Bakka, and it was a blessed one. There are only a few mentions in the Quran of the significance of the Kaaba, but once we go into the teachings of the Prophet, it opens up more and more and more. And lo and behold, it has to do with the heart. We see that there's a wonderful statement of the Blessed One, the Chosen One, the Prophet Muhammad, who who has said that the heavens and the earth cannot contain God. The heavens and the earth cannot contain God, but the heart of my faithful servant suffices me. The heavens and the earth cannot contain God, but the heart of my faithful devotee suffices me. So there's some kind of an intimate connection between the heart and something that contains God. And it's that tradition that establishes a deep and intimate link between the Kaaba and the heart. So we read in Sa'labi's Ara'isul Majalis that when God was forming the clay of humanity, there was clay that was gathered from the four corners of the earth. And Sa'labi specially names Egypt, Yemen, Arabia, the farthest lands of the east and the western lands of the west, as well as from the life center of the earth, which is the Kaaba. There's something of the Kaaba in you, and there's something of the Kaaba in me. When Shaykh al-Akbar Ibn Arabi talks about the significance of the Kaaba, this is what he says in the Futuhat. When God created your body, he placed within your body a Kaaba, which is your heart. He made this temple of heart the noblest of houses in every person of faith. He informed us that the heavens in which there is the celestial Kaaba and the earth in which there is the earthly Kaaba do not encompass God, do not hold the totality of God, but God can somehow be encompassed within the heart of the faithful one. Once we start getting into the Sufi tradition, we see that this link between the heart of the Kaaba, the inner meaning of the Kaaba, and the Kaaba of your own heart is opened up again and again. The early Sufi Khwaja Abdullah Ansari, who is responsible for bringing so much of the Islamic and the Sufi tradition to Afghanistan and to Pakistan and to India, has a beautiful line of poetry. He says, "Andar rah din do Ka'be amad hasil, yek Ka'be surat ast o yek Ka'be dil." There are two shrines that we find on the path of faith. One of them is the Kaaba of the external form, and one of them is the Kaaba of the heart. Make your pilgrimage to the heart, because this heart is worth 1,000 Kaabas. This is that constant play that we find in so much of our beautiful tradition. Just as God has an zahir and a batin, an external manifestation and an inner meaning, we're supposed to bring together and unify the external manifestation of the Kaaba with that inner reality. Maulana Rumi goes on to say, if you want the pilgrimage to that external Kaaba to count, make sure that you do not injure even a single heart. If you have a heart, he says, walk around the Kaaba of the heart. God commands you to walk around that external Kaaba so that you can attain to the heart. But be sure never to break even one heart. There's something about the human being, if we know our own worth, if you know what you're made of, if you know that you are a mixture of the Kaaba and the furthest away stars. That's what we all are. Stardust, mixed with the Kaaba, mixed with the holy earth, all of which is a temple and a mosque, mingling with the breath of God. So it's for that reason that there's a beautiful statement from the Blessed Prophet where he addresses the Kaaba and he says the following. It's a lovely statement. How pure are you? And how pure is your fragrance? How great are you? And how great is your holiness? But by the one in whose hand is the soul of Muhammad, the sanctity of each believer is greater to Allah than even your sanctity. Right? The holiness of every single human being is greater to Allah than even the holiness of the Kaaba. And that's an authentic statement of the Blessed Prophet. So how are we to approach the Kaaba? How is it that the Kaaba can enrich our coming to be with God when God is already everywhere? Well, a lot of it has to do with presence and with sincerity. Imam Ghazali has a beautiful book on the inner dimensions of worship. And his advice is that when you stand up for prayer, to imagine the Kaaba being right between your eyes. There's other sages like Kharaqani who say, no, when you stand up for prayer, only place the friend, the beloved, in front of you. So often when we think about prayer, it becomes this opportunity to go through God's drive-through, to ask for this and to ask for that, as if we know better than what God knows. And there's a rather humorous account that the same Imam Ghazali includes about the experience of the Kaaba. He says that one of the great saints, Wahib ibn Ward, who was from Mecca, says that one night he was praying by the Kaaba and he was blessed to hear the inner voice of the Kaaba. And the Kaaba was speaking with its covering, with the kiswa. And this is what the Kaaba was saying. To God I complain, and to Gabriel I complain, because of all these people who are circumambulating around me, all the people who are doing the walk of the pilgrimage around me, because of their thoughts, because of their vanities, and because of their endless chatter, asking for this and asking for that. And then Ghazali goes on to say, do not suppose the purpose to be your bodily walking around the Kaaba. No, the real purpose is the circling in your heart in the remembrance of Allah, the Lord of the house, so that the remembrance begins with God alone and ends with God alone. Sometimes in our tradition, there are these beautiful ways that these kinds of stories of the ones who love the Lord of the house, the friend of the house, more than the house itself, they take these teachings and they put it in very memorable story forms. So, for example, the great female saint Rabia has a wonderful account that she had gone on a journey to Mecca and halfway to Mecca, she sees that the Kaaba itself had come to greet her. Instead of her going to the Kaaba is coming to greet you. And in that typical boisterous, rambunctious style of Rabia, she says, I want the Lord of this house. What do I have to do with the house itself? This was not a unique story. There's another wonderful story that we get in Attar, that another great saint had gone to perform the pilgrimage to Mecca. And when they get there, they see that the Kaaba is missing. They've come to do the pilgrimage and there's no Kaaba in sight. And people say, oh yes, this happens all the time. The Kaaba has gone to see Rabia, right? There's no need for us to take these kinds of stories literally, but we can take them seriously. There's something about we desire to see the Lord of the house, and the house and the Lord of the house desires to see us. We remember many of the saints saying, oh Lord, I've been searching for you for 30 years. Only to hear the voice of God respond, I've been searching after you since before there was a thing called time. That other wonderful saint, Bayezid, has a wonderful story. This is still part of the living tradition, that there's a person who has saved up money all of his life to go to Kaaba. We're told that he had saved 200 silver coins to go to the journey. And Bayezid goes to visit him. And he says, oh, where are you going? And the old man says, oh, in the morning. In the morning, I'm going to set out for the Kaaba. And look, I prepared 200 coins right here to be my tuition for the journey. Bayezid says, here, walk around me. There's a Kaaba in my heart. Take that money and give it away to the poor and consider your pilgrimage performed. These kinds of stories are usually told by people who themselves, of course, love to go on pilgrimage. It's not that they avoid going to Mecca, but they're trying to deepen it. They're trying to always remind us that everywhere that you look, there is the face of God, and there's the Kaaba of clay, Kaaba Gel, and there's the Kaaba of the heart, Kaaba Del. We have to learn to honor both. It's so easy to think that God is only on the outside, that God is only in Mecca. God is hidden inside of each breath. And it's the point at which we bring together that inner realization with the outer journey that we achieve wholeness. Maulana Rumi says in the Masnavi, the grandeur of the Kaaba in every breath is because of the sincerity of Abraham. That the Kaaba by itself was not holy, it was the love and the service and devotion that Abraham and Ishmael and Hagar and all of us pilgrims and lovers and seekers bring over to the Kaaba. So why did we start our music today by that beautiful qawwali, Tokuja Mankuja? Look at how lofty you are and look at where I am. As our dear sister Shabana reminded us, this is from Muzaffar Warsi. Well, there's a long-standing interpretation in our tradition that the real meaning of the Kaaba is the heart of the Prophet. I'll read for you one line from Rumi's book called Fihi Ma Fihi. These are more or less the fireside chats of Maulana Rumi. It's friends sitting around asking him questions and for him to answer them. So one day, people ask him, what's the real hidden meaning, inner meaning of the Kaaba? And this is what he answers. This is in the 43rd chapter of the Fihi Ma Fihi. It's a beautiful collection. It's been translated twice, once by Arbery and once by Thaxton. I'd be happy to share the PDF of one of them with friends if they're interested. But in the original, Maulana says, Maqsood az Kabe dil anbiya va awliyast, ke mahall wahyi haqq ast va Kabe far'i an ast. Agar dil nabashad, Kabe be che kar ayad? The real meaning of the Kaaba is the heart of the prophets and the hearts of the saints. It is in these hearts that God is truly revealed. That external Kaaba is a branch of that tree. If the heart of the prophets is not there, what use is the external Kaaba? So let's sit with this for a second. People oftentimes talk about when you go to the Kaaba, that there is this extraordinary transformation. Perhaps it's something more powerful than the Taj Mahal or the Alhambra or the Hagia Sophia, where you've heard so much about it in your life, and then you go for prayer, and the minute that you see it, you realize that no words have ever done it justice, that no description can possibly tell you how powerful it is to be there. And then you pray with everything that you have brought there with you. You pray as if you see the face of God, and remembering that the definition of love and beauty is to also be seen by God. Maulana Rumi says, and that's what it's like to think of the heart of the Prophet. How would we walk if our prayer and our action had the presence of the heart of the Prophet? How would we speak with one another? How would we look upon one another if right in front of us was the heart of the Prophet? There's that sense of realizing the presence of the prophets. These, as the Quran says, are not dead. They're not figures of history. They're with us. And in some ways, we can summon them. We can summon ourselves to be fully present to them. And when we do, when we live in the presence of the Prophet, then it's as if we are praying in front of the Kaaba. And Maulana says, Dile Anbiya, all the prophets. There's one light that is scattered into so many different rays. And for some, that prophet might be the Buddha. For some, it might be Christ. For some, it might be Moses. For some, it might be Maryam. It might be one of those untold prophets whom we've not been told about. But to be present to their heart with our own heart is to have the Kaaba of the heart be present with the Kaaba outside. Maulana uses one other example that I want to share before we start wrapping things up. And he gives you the analogy of if you're journeying on the pilgrimage towards Mecca, and imagine that Mecca is today physically within Arabia, and someone might be coming from Pakistan, and they're going to be journeying west. And someone might be coming from Morocco, and they're going to be journeying east. And someone may come from South Africa, they're going to head north. Someone may come from Norway, and they're going to head south. So the paths appear to all be different. This person is coming this way, and that person is coming that way. And their paths appear to be contradictory. And sometimes people start to argue with one another about which way is the right way to get to the temple of the heart. We see this not only as something between different religious traditions, but also and especially within. How often do we hear people who allegedly have the same God and the same prophet and the same book and the same law and the same teachings argue over the most detailed and minute aspects of things? So this is what Rumi says. For some, the road to the Kaaba is from Anatolia, and from some it is from Syria and Palestine. From some it is from Persia, and from some from China. For some it is by sea from India and Yemen. Once they have arrived at the Kaaba, they realize that all of this arguing and all of this warfare, this one saying to that one, you are false, you are an infidel, and the other one replying in kind, was only about the paths that they had taken, and all along the goal was the same. There are many paths to the Kaaba, but the destination is one. As we get closer and closer and closer to the Kaaba, the great Shams Tabriz, Maulana's beautiful friend and teacher, offers us this exquisite metaphor. It's something that we're going to take with us into our breakout rooms. He says, imagine that you have come, this friend from Syria, and this one from Yemen, and that one from India and Pakistan, and this one from China. And we come to Mecca, and we come to the Kaaba from all these different directions. We gather around the Kaaba, and we begin to bow down in prayer. And Shams says, imagine for 1 second that you have gone and you have removed the Kaaba. Then you see that the one here is bowing down to the one in front. And the one on the other side is bowing down to this friend. That's the whole goal of friendship, fellowship, and companionship. The whole intention is to have the Kaaba in you honor, respect, and venerate, adore the Kaaba in the friend in front of you. There is something of the Kaaba in them, in their body, and their very heart is a Kaaba, and the breath of God illuminates them. Can we see this in one another? Can we honor that in each other? Remember that so many of our traditions, when you see a friend, you gently touch your hand to your heart and you bow down ever so reverentially. Okay? The Nur in me sees the Nur in you. The Kaaba in me sees the Kaaba in you. There's one last step. Why should we stop at gathering around the house of God? One more step. What if we were to go inside the Kaaba? What if we held hands and we had the great honor of going inside and sitting inside the very house of God that is empty? There's a few individuals who get to have this honor of walking inside the physical Kaaba. But we can go inside the Kaaba of the heart anytime. Where there is love, you have someone take you into the garden of their heart. There's a Kaaba here, and you can enter it. There's a Kaaba in your heart, and you can choose to let people in who are worthy of it. The great legal minds had a lot of fun trying to imagine, if you're inside the Kaaba, which way do you pray? Imagine all the arguments and all the apps and all the charts that have been developed trying to figure out, if you're in California, do you pray west or do you pray east? And people get bent out of shape over these things. Which way do you pray if you're inside the Kaaba? Up, down, east, west, front, back. There's only God. There's only the friend. And so this is what Maulana says. Dar darun Ka'beh rasm qible neest. Once you're inside the Kaaba, the rules of the Qibla, the rules of the direction no longer apply. That really wonderful line of Rumi that gets abused a lot, it's in this context. Millat-e ishq az hame dinha judast. Ashiqan ra millat o mazhab khudast. The religion of love is different than all religions. For those lovers, for the ashiqan, their community and their path is God. That's where we're trying to get to, my friends. Yes, we begin by prayer. Yes, we begin with pilgrimage. Yes, we begin by honoring God and the house of God and the prophets of God. But we're trying to get to that point where ultimately we're inside God's temple. So my friends, I'm going to set up some breakout rooms. And if you give me a second, we're going to take some moment to be together in these breakout rooms. If you're new to us and you have not yet had a chance to be in one of these conversations, this is simply an opportunity for you and for us to get to meet some friends from around the world. There's a couple of rules. The first rule is we are here to honor the Kaaba inside each and every one of us. Nobody in any of these rooms is a sheikh, a peer, a guru, a healer, a counselor, a teacher, a lawyer, a rebuker. We are here to witness one another. We're here to be with one another. It would be wonderful if the conversations that we have should and could somehow touch on the themes that we've been talking here. Most of the groups, I think, are probably going to have around 4 or so people. And if you notice that a person has been going on for more than 2-3 minutes, just take a moment and very humbly and politely say, thank you. Thank you. That's a sign to pass the mic and have the next person go. We're not here to correct each other. We're not here to guide each other. We're just here to keep each other's company. So we'll take maybe about 15 minutes or so. And let's see if this works. Give me one quick second to assign the rooms and make sure that they're somehow even in terms of number. Give me one quick second, my friends. I am mindful, by the way, of the fact that some of us, for us, this is a kind of frightening thing to be sent to a room where you might be in a situation of having a conversation with people who are somewhat new to you. We can do this, and we can do it, inshallah, with grace, and we can do it with dignity and with beauty. We're almost there. So you will see me send a little signal after we have been together for some period of time to come back together. So by then you should get a moment to wrap up your conversations and rejoin our groups. If you have any questions about how we hope to do this, this would be a great time to ask, and let me know if I can try to answer them. Feel free to put it in the chat line. And if not, then I will be sending us off in just 1 second. Thank you for your patience. All right. So here we go, my dear friends. Thank you again, and see you very shortly. I think you should get the invitations now.